Black owner opened her diner for 16 stranded bikers. What happened next is shocking. Amber Johnson wiped down the counter of her diner for what felt like the 100th time that evening. The red vinyl booths gleamed under the soft glow of hanging pendant lights, and the checkered floor sparkled clean enough to eat off of, though she'd never allow such a thing in Amber's diner. 11 years of ownership had taught her that standards were everything in this business. "Last call for pie, Marcus," she said to her only remaining customer, a regular who nursed his coffee at the counter. "I'm closing in 15. The elderly man smiled, revealing a gap where his front tooth should be. "I'm all set, Miss Amber. Just enjoying the quiet before heading home." Thunder rumbled in the distance, as if responding to their conversation. Amber glanced through the large front windows at the darkening sky. What had started as light drizzle was transforming into something more ominous. "Storm's picking up," she remarked, more to herself than to Marcus. "Might want to head out before it gets bad." Marcus nodded, placed a $5 bill under his coffee cup, and shuffled toward the exit. "See you tomorrow morning bright and early." As the bell above the door jingled with his departure, Amber sighed deeply. Another day done. Another day of keeping the diner, her father's diner, technically, running against increasingly tough odds. The big chain restaurant that had opened on the highway last year was slowly bleeding her business dry. She moved toward the register to count the day's earnings when the first heavy raindrops began to pelt against the windows. Within seconds, the drizzle transformed into a downpour so thick she could barely see the parking lot. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the empty street outside, followed by a crack of thunder that seemed to shake the building. That's when she heard it, the distinctive rumble of motorcycle engines. Not just one, but many, growing louder as they approached. Amber frowned. Nobody should be out riding in this weather. The sound grew until it was unmistakable, a convoy of motorcycles pulling into her parking lot. Through the rain-streaked windows, she counted at least a dozen bikes, their riders hunched against the storm. Her hand instinctively moved toward the baseball bat she kept beneath the counter. 16 years in this small town had generally been peaceful, but she wasn't naive. A group of bikers showing up at closing time during a storm wasn't exactly comforting. The front door burst open as the first rider entered, water cascading from his leather jacket. He was massive, at least 6'3" with shoulders that nearly filled the doorframe. A thick beard covered most of his face, and tattoos peeked from beneath his collar. "Sorry to barge in, ma'am," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle despite his intimidating appearance. "Got caught in this mess. Mind if my brothers and I waited out?" Before Amber could answer, more riders filed in behind him, 15 more, to be exact. They were a mix of ages and races, all wearing similar leather vests with patches she couldn't quite make out. Water pooled beneath them on her clean floor. "We're closed," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "About to lock up for the night." The first man, clearly their leader, removed his wet cap and held it respectfully at his chest. "We understand. We'd be happy to pay extra for the trouble. Just need shelter until this passes, maybe some coffee if you're willing." Something in his demeanor gave her pause. Despite their rough appearances, they were being polite, almost deferential. She'd been around enough to know tough guys who were putting on an act, and something told her this wasn't one. "Fine," she said after a moment's consideration. "But you'll need to order something. I don't run a shelter." A chorus of grateful murmurs rippled through the group as they began to remove their wet outer layers. Amber watched cautiously as they arranged themselves throughout her diner, filling nearly every booth. To her surprise, they were careful not to track mud or drip excessively on her floors. "Kitchen's closed," she announced, moving behind the counter. "But I've got coffee, pie, and some sandwiches left from lunch." Orders came in politely, with "please" and "thank you, ma'am" attached to each request. As Amber worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. These men were treating her with an unusual level of respect, almost like they knew her. One of the younger riders approached the counter while she poured coffee. He was leaner than most, with salt and pepper hair tied back in a short ponytail, and intelligent eyes that seemed to be assessing her. "Name's Mac," he said, extending a hand. Thanks for letting us in. Amber hesitated before accepting the handshake. Amber Johnson. Something flickered across Mac's face, recognition, maybe even surprise, but it disappeared as quickly as it had come. Nice place you got here, he commented, glancing around at the vintage decor. Been open long? 11 years under me. But the diner's been here since the 70s. Mac nodded, his gaze drifting to the wall behind her where dozens of framed photos hung, snapshots of the diner's history and the town's past. You collect these yourself? Some. Others were here when I took over. As Amber distributed coffee to the tables, she noticed Mac studying the photos more intently. He had stopped at one particular frame, a faded color photograph from the mid-80s showing a young black man with a wide smile, his arm thrown around the shoulders of a white guy in a leather vest. They stood in front of the diner, a motorcycle visible in the background. You know him? Mac asked, pointing to the black man in the photo. Amber's throat tightened. My father. One of the few pictures I have of him. He walked out when I was 4. The leader of the group had joined Mac by this time, and they exchanged a meaningful glance that Amber couldn't decipher. The atmosphere in the diner shifted subtly. Several of the bikers were now staring at her with undisguised curiosity. Something wrong? Amber asked, uncomfortable with the attention. Not at all, the leader replied. Just appreciating the hospitality. As the storm raged outside, Amber watched the bikers from behind the counter. They spoke quietly among themselves, occasionally glancing in her direction. She caught fragments of their conversation. Can't be coincidence. And spitting image of him. That made no sense to her. Mac approached the counter again, coffee mug in hand. Refill, please? As she poured, he said casually. You know, my father used to come through this town years back. Said this diner had the best apple pie east of the Mississippi. Family recipe, Amber replied, trying to sound normal despite her growing unease. Your father's? Mac asked, meeting her eyes directly. No. My mother's. Amber set the coffee pot down with more force than necessary. Look, what's this about? You all keep looking at me like you've seen a ghost. Mac placed something on the counter between them, a heavy silver ring with an intricate design of a serpent coiled around a sword. Does this look familiar to you, Ms. Johnson? Amber froze, her fingers hovering over the ring. In the box of her father's meager possessions, the only things he'd left behind was a ring identical to this one. She'd assumed it was just costume jewelry, meaningless. Who are you people? She whispered, the rain and thunder suddenly seeming distant compared to the pounding of her heart. Mac's expression softened. We're friends of your father's. And we have a lot to talk about. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if nature itself was building toward the revelation that would change Amber Johnson's life forever. I think you should sit down for this, Mac said, pulling out a stool at the counter. Amber remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. I'm fine right where I am. Just say what you came to say. The leader of the group approached, extending his hand. Name's Diesel. I rode with your father for 20 years. My father was a delivery driver who abandoned his family. Amber replied flatly. Whatever you think you know about him. Your mother told you that? Diesel interrupted gently. The question hung in the air like smoke. Amber's certainty wavered. Her mother had died 3 years ago, taking whatever truths she might have been hiding to her grave. Your father, Mac continued carefully, was Richard Blackjack Johnson. He founded the Iron Serpents Motorcycle Club in 1979. Amber's laugh was short and bitter. Right. My dad the biker gang leader. Is this some kind of joke? Diesel nodded to one of the older riders, who produced a weathered leather wallet and extracted a faded photograph. He handed it to Amber without comment. The image showed a group of about 20 bikers standing proudly in front of a clubhouse. At their center stood the same man from the diner photo, her father, looking confident and commanding. He wore a leather vest covered in patches, prominently featuring a green serpent wrapped around a sword. That was taken in '85. Diesel explained. By then, the Iron Serpents controlled territory in 3 states. Your father built something powerful from nothing. Amber's hands trembled slightly as she studied the photo. If that's true, why did he leave? Why did my mother say he abandoned us? The bikers exchanged uncomfortable glances before Mac answered. Your mother didn't approve of the life. When things got dangerous in '89, she gave him an ultimatum, the club or his family. And he chose the club, Amber said coldly, the familiar resentment rising in her chest. No, Diesel countered. He chose your safety. The Vulture's MC had put a hit out on him. Your father knew as long as he was in your lives, you'd both be targets. Amber's mind raced, trying to reconcile this new information with the narrative she'd carried her entire life. My mother never remarried. Never even dated. She worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Jack made sure money was delivered every month. An older biker with a gray beard interjected. Cash payments through an attorney. Your mother didn't want his dirty money, but Jack insisted. That's a lie, Amber whispered, but the fight was leaving her voice. She remembered the mysterious envelopes that would arrive, her mother's tight-lipped silence when she asked about them. Mac reached into his jacket and produced a small box. He never stopped watching over you, Amber. Never stopped caring. Inside the box was a collection of photographs. Amber at her high school graduation, opening the diner, receiving a community award last year. All taken from a distance. All moments when she'd been completely unaware of being observed. He was always there, Diesel said softly. Just far enough away to keep you safe. Tears stung Amber's eyes. If what you're saying is true, why come to me now? Why after all this time? The atmosphere in the diner grew heavy, the storm outside momentarily forgotten. Black Jack died 3 days ago, Mac said, his voice cracking slightly. Heart attack. It was quick. The news hit Amber like a physical blow. Any possibility of confrontation, of answers, of closure, gone forever. She braced herself against the counter. I'm sorry for your loss, she managed, the words feeling strangely inadequate for a man she both knew and didn't know. It's your loss too, Diesel replied. Whether you knew him or not. Amber reached into her pocket and withdrew her keychain. Attached to it was a small, battered key. There's a lockbox in my office. I found it when I bought this place. Inside is a ring just like that one. She nodded toward the silver serpent ring Mac had shown her. I always wondered. It's his original ring, Diesel confirmed. The one he wore when he founded the club. Why would he leave it here? Amber asked. Mac and Diesel exchanged significant looks. Because he owned this diner, Mac explained. Set it up through a shell corporation back in the 70s. When you were looking to start your own business 11 years ago. The seller practically gave it away, Amber finished, realization dawning. The price was absurdly low. I always thought it was just luck. It wasn't luck, Diesel said. It was your inheritance. The first part, anyway. First part? Mac leaned forward, his expression deadly serious. The club bylaws are clear. Leadership stays in the family line. Black Jack never appointed a successor because, in his mind, there was only one option. No, Amber said, stepping back. No way. You're Black Jack's only child, Diesel stated. According to Iron Serpent law, you're the rightful heir to everything he built. Lightning flashed, momentarily painting the diner in harsh white light, illuminating the stunned expression on Amber's face. We believe he left his will here, Mac continued. Somewhere in this diner. And we need to find it before word gets out that he's gone. Why? Amber asked. Because, Diesel said grimly, there are others who will finish to take what's rightfully yours. The storm had subsided to a gentle patter against the windows, but the tension inside Amber's diner remained electric. Amber paced behind the counter, trying to process everything she just learned. This is insane, she muttered. You're telling me my father was some kind of biker kingpin who secretly owned this diner, and now I'm supposed to inherit his, what? His criminal empire? The Iron Serpents aren't what you think, Max said, leaning against the counter. We started rough, sure. But Jack transformed the club over the years. We run legitimate businesses now, custom shops, security firms, even a few restaurants. Either way, I want no part of it, Amber insisted. I've built my life here. I'm a business owner, not a leader? Diesel interrupted. That's exactly what you are. This diner didn't succeed because of luck. It succeeded because you're Jack's daughter. Amber fell silent, absorbing the implications. The will, Mac prompted gently. We need to find it. Not just for the club's sake, but for your protection. What makes you think it's here? Amber asked. Jack told me, Diesel replied. 2 weeks ago, he said if anything happened to him, everything I needed to know would be where it all began. Amber glanced around the diner, seeing it through new eyes. And that's here? This was his first legitimate business, Mac explained. The place where the Iron Serpents transformed from outlaws to entrepreneurs. Something clicked in Amber's mind. The lockbox key. It doesn't just open the box with a ring. She moved quickly toward her office, the bikers following cautiously behind. The small office was cluttered but organized, with schedules and invoices neatly arranged on a bulletin board. Amber pulled open the bottom desk drawer and removed a worn metal box. The key from her keychain fit perfectly, revealing the silver serpent ring inside, identical to Mac's. There's nothing else, she said, disappointed. The box itself, Diesel suggested. Any hidden compartments? Amber examined it closely, running her fingers along the edges until she felt a slight irregularity in the bottom panel. She pressed, and a false bottom popped loose, revealing a folded piece of paper with a single line written in faded ink. The birth of the serpent marks the spot. What does that mean? She asked. The bikers looked equally puzzled until Max snapped his fingers. The founding photo. The one on the wall. That was taken the day Jack officially started the Iron Serpents. They hurried back to the main dining area where the photo of her father hung. Amber carefully removed the frame from the wall and examined it. Nothing seemed unusual about the frame or the backing. It's not here, she said, disappointed. Wait, an older biker called out. Where was the photo taken? Amber studied the image more carefully. Her father and his friend were standing in front of the diner, but something looked different. The brick, she realized. This section of the wall was exposed brick back then. We covered it during renovations. She led them to the kitchen where part of the original wall remained. Running her fingers along the bricks, she felt one that protruded slightly more than the others. With some effort, she worked it loose. Behind the brick was a small cavity containing a sealed envelope, yellowed with age but intact. Her hands trembled as she carefully opened it and removed several legal documents. It's the will, she confirmed, scanning the pages. And ownership papers for the diner. He really did own this place. What else? Diesel asked intently. Amber continued reading, her expression growing more troubled with each page. It says leadership of the Iron Serpents passes to me upon his death. There's an account number, assets listed. Her voice faltered. This says the club has holdings worth over $20 million. The bikers exchanged glances, some nodding in confirmation. There's something else, Amber said, pulling out a handwritten letter. It's addressed to me. She read silently at first, her eyes filling with tears as she absorbed her father's words, explanations, regrets, hopes for her future. Then she reached a passage that made her blood run cold. If you're reading this, she read aloud, then I'm gone, and the vultures will be moving quickly. They've wanted control of our territory for decades. Without clear leadership, they'll try to take everything I built. The diner isn't just a business, it's your birthright and the heart of our operations. Hidden in the safe behind the refrigerator is everything you'll need to protect yourself. The combination is your birthday. Safe? Mac asked, already moving toward the industrial refrigerator. With help, they pulled it far enough from the wall to reveal a small safe embedded in the concrete. Amber entered her birth date, and the door swung open, revealing a handgun, a flash drive, and a thick folder labeled contingencies. He knew this day would come, Diesel said quietly. He prepared for everything. Amber opened the folder to find detailed profiles of rival gang members, territories, businesses, and, most disturbingly, a recent threat assessment highlighting the Vultures MC as an imminent danger. "The Vultures will come for you," she read from her father's letter. "Not just for the business, but because of who you are, my legacy. You have a choice to make, daughter. Run or stand and fight for what's rightfully yours." As if on cue, the distant rumble of motorcycles broke the silence of the night. "That's not our guys," Max said, moving quickly to the window. "Looks like the Vultures got word faster than we expected." "What do they want?" Amber asked, clutching the will tightly. "Everything," Diesel answered grimly. "Your father's legacy, the club's territory, this diner, and they'll go through you to get it." Amber stared at the will in her hands, the weight of her father's legacy suddenly very real and very dangerous. Dawn broke over Amber's diner with streaks of orange and pink cutting through the post-storm clouds. Amber hadn't slept. After the distant rumble of motorcycles had faded into the night, a warning rather than an immediate threat, she'd spent hours with Mac and Diesel, absorbing the reality of her situation. "They're just scouting," Diesel had assured her. "The Vultures won't make a move until they're certain about Jack's death and the succession plan." Now, as morning light filtered through the blinds, Amber stood behind the counter brewing coffee on autopilot. The Iron Serpents had remained all night, positioning themselves strategically around the diner, some inside, others keeping watch from the parking lot. They'd insisted, despite her protests. "You look like you could use this more than me," Max said, sliding a fresh cup of coffee back across the counter to her. Amber accepted it gratefully. "I still can't believe any of this is real. Real enough that you should consider closing the diner today," Max suggested. She shook her head firmly. "No. I've never closed unexpectedly in 11 years. I'm not starting now because of some biker territory dispute. It's more than a territory dispute," Diesel interjected, joining them at the counter. "The Vultures have been waiting for this opportunity for decades. With Jack gone, they'll move fast and hard unless they see the Iron Serpents have a strong new leader." "And that's supposed to be me?" Amber asked incredulously. "I make pancakes for a living. I don't lead motorcycle gangs." "Clubs," Mac corrected with a slight smile. "And Jack didn't think you'd step into his role overnight. That's why he left the contingency plans." Before Amber could respond, the bell above the door jingled. A handful of regular customers entered, looking curiously at the leather-clad men scattered throughout the diner. "Morning, Miss Amber," called Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who came in every morning for tea and toast. "You're hosting a convention?" Amber forced a smile. "Just some friends passing through. Take your usual table." For the next hour, she maintained a facade of normalcy, serving breakfast while the Iron Serpents tried to look inconspicuous, an impossible task given their numbers and appearance. The locals whispered among themselves, but no one said anything directly. Small-town courtesy, Amber supposed. Around 9, Mac tensed visibly, staring out the window. "Company," he murmured. 3 motorcycles pulled into the lot, their riders dressed in black leather vests emblazoned with a circling vulture patch. They dismounted slowly, making a show of it. "Stay inside," Diesel ordered Amber, moving toward the door with several others. "This is my diner," she insisted, following them out. The leader of the 3 vultures was a tall, wiry man with a shaved head and a jagged scar running from his left eye to his jaw. His smile revealed several gold teeth as he approached. Well, he drawled, eyeing the Iron Serpents. "Looks like the rumors are true. Black Jack finally kicked the bucket." Diesel stepped forward, creating a barrier between the man and Amber. "Show some respect, Razor. You're on Serpent territory." "Not for long," Razor replied, his gaze shifting to Amber. "This the daughter? Heard she was running some greasy spoon. Didn't believe it until now." He made a show of looking at the diner's sign. Ambitious name. Amber's Diner. Think it's time for a change. One of his companions laughed, pulling out a switchblade and striding toward the sign. Before anyone could stop him, he'd carved a crude X across Amber's name. Stop! Amber shouted, pushing past Diesel. Razor's eyes narrowed as he assessed her. Word is, Black Jack left everything to you. That true? That's none of your business, she replied coldly. Oh, but it is. He stepped closer, ignoring the tension radiating from the iron serpents. See, your daddy and I had an understanding. He stayed out of my way, I stayed out of his. But now he's gone, and this territory's up for grabs. The territory isn't up for grabs, Diesel growled. The succession is clear. The Iron Serpents remain under Johnson leadership. Razor laughed. Her? She's going to lead the Iron Serpents? A diner owner who probably can't even ride. I can ride, Amber said automatically, surprising herself. It was true. Her mother had forbidden motorcycles, so naturally, she'd learned to ride in college, a small act of rebellion. This isn't your world, princess, Razor sneered. You've got no idea what's coming. As if on cue, the sound of engines filled the air. Not just 3 bikes this time, but at least 20, turning into the street that led to the diner. That's just a taste, Razor said, mounting his motorcycle. Consider it a welcoming committee. He nodded toward the tires of the Iron Serpent's bikes, which Amber now noticed had been slashed during their conversation. You've got 24 hours to sign over the club and all its holdings to the Vultures. After that, he drew a finger across his throat. The 3 vultures roared away just as their reinforcements came into view, circling the diner once in an intimidating parade before continuing down the road. Inside, customers were pressed against the windows, watching with wide eyes. The word would spread quickly through town. We need to call the police, Amber said, heading for the phone. Mac gently caught her arm. That's not how this works. Police can't help with club business. This isn't club business. They vandalized my property, threatened me. And they'll do worse, Diesel interrupted. Unless you make a decision. Amber looked from the carved-up sign to the slashed tires to the frightened faces of her customers inside. This wasn't the life she'd built for herself. This wasn't what she wanted. What decision? She asked, her voice barely audible. Mac held up her father's will. Sign this and take your rightful place as leader of the Iron Serpents, or burn it and walk away. But know this, either way, the vultures are coming. At least with us, you stand a chance. Amber's world had changed overnight, transformed from the simple life of a diner owner to the heir of a complicated legacy she never asked for. Now she faced an impossible choice: embrace a world she didn't understand or lose everything she'd worked for. Amber spent the rest of the day in a daze. She went through the motions of running her diner, serving customers, making small talk, all while the Iron Serpents stood guard and repaired their slashed tires. The locals whispered and stared, but news of the confrontation had spread quickly, and many came just to show support. My daddy used to talk about the Iron Serpents, Mrs. Patterson had confided over her lunch. Said they were the reason this town never had real trouble. Said they protected their own. By closing time, Amber had made her decision. She gathered the Iron Serpents in the diner after locking the doors. I won't sign the will, she announced, her voice steady despite the thumping of her heart. Disappointment flickered across Diesel's face. You're walking away. No, Amber corrected. I'm doing this my way. My father built something, and I won't let it be destroyed. But I won't become something I'm not. She pulled out the folder of contingency plans her father had left. There's something in here about a charter, the original rules of the Iron Serpents. I want to see it. Mac reached inside his vest and produced a worn leather-bound book. Every member carries a copy. It's our Bible. Amber flipped through the pages, stopping on a section that had caught her eye in her father's notes. Article 7, Section 3. She read aloud. In matters of disputed succession, resolution may be sought through the challenge of merit rather than bloodshed. The bikers exchanged glances. Nobody's invoked that in decades, Diesel said. It's from the early days. What is it? Amber asked. A non-violent competition between rival claimants, Mac explained. The challenger chooses the contest, something that tests skill, courage, and leadership. Amber closed the book decisively. That's how we handle the vultures. They won't agree to it. An older biker objected. Razor doesn't play by the old rules. He will if it's public, Amber countered. If we make it so everyone in the territory knows about the challenge, he can't refuse without losing face. Dawn found Amber and the Iron Serpents preparing the diner for the day ahead, a day that would determine all their fates. Word had been sent to the vultures about the challenge of merit, with the diner as neutral ground for the meeting. At exactly noon, the rumble of motorcycles announced the vultures' arrival. Razor led at least 30 riders, all looking menacing in their black leather. They parked in formation, creating a wall of machines across the parking lot. Inside, the diner was empty of regular customers. Amber had closed to the public, citing private event. She stood behind the counter, Diesel and Mac flanking her, the rest of the Iron Serpents positioned strategically throughout the space. The bell jingled as Razor entered, followed by 5 of his top lieutenants. His eyes swept the diner before settling on Amber. Cute message, he sneered. But I'm not here to play games. I'm here for your signature. Amber stepped forward, holding the charter. According to Iron Serpent law, which governs all motorcycle clubs in this territory, I have the right to challenge your claim through the challenge of merit. Razor laughed. That old relic? No one follows that anymore. The Iron Serpents do, Diesel stated firmly. And if you want legitimacy in taking over this territory, you need to honor it as well. Murmurs from the vultures suggested not all of them were dismissive of the tradition. Razor noticed it too, his expression hardening. Even if I agreed, he said carefully, what sort of challenge could you possibly hope to win, princess? Baking contest? A race, Amber replied without hesitation. Just you and me. The suggestion was met with incredulous stares from both sides. You against me on bikes? Razor's laugh was genuine this time. I've been riding for 30 years. Not bikes, Amber clarified. Cars. Quarter mile, straight shot down Main Street. Razor considered this, clearly calculating his chances. What's the stake? If you win, I sign over everything, the club, the diner, all of it, Amber said, raising the document for emphasis. If I win, the vultures acknowledge the Iron Serpent's rightful territory and leave this town for good. Deal, Razor said too quickly, extending his hand. Tomorrow at dawn, before the town wakes up. Not tomorrow, Amber countered. Now. And not cars. She moved to the back of the diner and slid aside a hidden panel, revealing a storage space. Inside, covered with a tarp, was a gleaming black motorcycle, vintage, powerful, and immaculately maintained. My father's bike, she explained, pulling off the cover. The one he founded the Iron Serpents with. The race happens today on this. Whispers erupted among both clubs. Riding Black Jack's legendary machine was either brilliant symbolism or foolish sentimentality, depending on which side you asked. You'll race me on that relic? Razor taunted, though his eyes betrayed his nervousness. One bike. We take turns. Best time wins, Amber said confidently. Unless you're afraid to race a princess on equal terms. The challenge hung in the air. Razor's pride wouldn't let him refuse, especially with so many witnesses. Fine, he spat. But when I win, I'm hanging that bike as a trophy in my clubhouse. As they moved outside to set up the impromptu race, Mac pulled Amber aside. Are you sure about this? That bike hasn't been ridden in years. Amber ran her hand along the leather seat. I found maintenance records in the file. Dad had it serviced regularly, even though it was in storage. It's ready. But are you? Mac pressed. This isn't just about riding skill. It's about claiming your place. Amber took a deep breath, feeling the eyes of both clubs upon her. In that moment, she could almost sense her father watching too. "I'm not just a diner owner anymore," she said quietly. "I'm Black Jack's daughter. And it's time I started acting like it." Main Street had been hastily converted into a makeshift racetrack. Word had spread through town, and despite efforts to keep the event private, residents lined the sidewalks, watching curiously as the two motorcycle clubs set up a quarter-mile course. Amber stood beside her father's bike, running her hand along its gleaming chrome while Mac explained the controls. Though she'd ridden before, this machine was different, powerful, temperamental, a beast from another era. "It's got more kick than anything you've probably handled," he cautioned. "Easy on the throttle." Razor was already strutting around, making a show of stretching and warming up as if preparing for an Olympic event. He'd won the coin toss and would ride first. "Watch and learn, princess," he called as he straddled Black Jack's motorcycle. The engine roared to life beneath him, and for a moment, even Amber had to admit he looked comfortable on the vintage bike. One of the vultures raised a bandana as a makeshift starter flag. When it dropped, Razor shot forward, the bike's engine screaming as he tore down Main Street. His skill was undeniable as he navigated the straight course, crossing the finish line in a respectable time. 23.6 seconds, announced the timekeeper, a neutral party they'd found in the local mechanic who'd maintained Black Jack's bike. Razor dismounted with a smug grin, patting the motorcycle. "Nice machine. Shame it's going to be mine in about 2 minutes." Amber took her place at the starting line, feeling the weight of both clubs' stares. The Iron Serpents looked nervous, the vultures confident and mocking. She closed her eyes briefly, hands resting on the handlebars her father had gripped countless times. "You don't have to do this," Diesel said quietly beside her. "We can find another way." "No," Amber replied, pulling on the helmet Mac offered. "This is exactly what I have to do." She felt a strange calm as the starter raised the bandana. The world narrowed to just her, the bike, and the stretch of asphalt ahead. When the flag dropped, she didn't hesitate. The motorcycle leapt forward with startling power, nearly lifting its front wheel. Amber leaned into it, remembering her college riding days, feeling the machine respond to her slightest movements. There was something familiar about it, as if her hands somehow knew exactly what to do. Wind rushed past her helmet as she pushed the bike faster, the buildings on either side blurring. The quarter-mile stretched endlessly ahead, then suddenly the finish line was approaching. She crossed it in a flash, braking smoothly to bring the powerful machine under control. Silence hung in the air as she circled back, removing her helmet. The timekeeper stared at his stopwatch in disbelief. 21.9 seconds, he announced. For a moment, no one moved. Then the Iron Serpents erupted in cheers while the vultures stood in stunned silence. Razor's face contorted with fury. "Impossible," he snarled. "The bike performed differently for her. It's rigged." "A deal's a deal," Diesel reminded him, stepping between Razor and Amber. "She won fair and square. Now honor your word and get your club out of our territory." For a tense moment, it seemed Razor might renege, might order his 30 riders to attack. But the laws of the clubs were sacred, and breaking them would cost him respect among his own members. "This isn't over," he growled, signaling to his gang. "Nobody holds territory forever." "Maybe not," Amber replied calmly, still seated on her father's motorcycle. "But today, this is Iron Serpent land." The vultures departed in a cloud of exhaust and wounded pride, their engine's roar fading as they left town. The townspeople, who had witnessed everything, tentatively approached, regarding Amber with new eyes. "That was something else, Miss Johnson," the local sheriff said, having arrived too late to stop the race but early enough to witness the outcome. "Your father would have been proud." "You knew?" Amber asked, surprised. The sheriff smiled. "Everyone of a certain age knew who Black Jack was. He did a lot for this town quietly. Kept the peace his own way." Over the next few weeks, Amber settled into a new reality. The Iron Serpents respected her victory and her right to lead, but she did things differently than her father had. She converted the diner's back room into a club meeting space, established regular town halls where residents could air concerns directly to the club, and initiated community service programs that put the Iron Serpent's strength to constructive use. "We protect our own," became her motto, but with a broader definition of our own than the club had traditionally used. 1 month after the race, Amber stood behind the counter of her diner, now sporting a new sign that incorporated a subtle green serpent into the design, and surveyed her domain. The morning crowd was a mix of locals and Iron Serpents, sharing tables and conversation in a way that would have been unimaginable before. "Your dad used to stand exactly like that," Mac observed, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "Same proud look on his face." "I'm not trying to be him," Amber replied, pouring Mac's coffee without being asked. "No," he agreed. "You're being yourself. That's what makes you a better leader than he ever was." The bell above the door jingled as more customers entered. Amber greeted them with a smile that contained new confidence. "Welcome to Amber's," she said warmly. "What can I get you?" The Iron Serpent's patch on her apron caught the morning light as she moved, not displayed prominently like the men wore theirs, but present nonetheless. A symbol of the legacy she'd inherited and transformed into something uniquely her own. The diner that had once been just her livelihood had become the heart of something greater, a community, a legacy, and a second chance for the daughter of Black Jack Johnson to know her father through the world he built and left for her to remake.